Hello, it's Philip Taylor from Richmond Green Chambers speaking, and this is a YouTube review. It's a detailed review of this book on Sir William Garrow. Now, Garrow was a barrister 200 years ago, and this book is his Lifetimes and Fight for Justice. Lightish book, not particularly heavy. Written by John Hostettler and Richard Braby, and Richard is a direct descendant of Garrow. It's 170 odd pages with appendices at the back, some nice pictures and so forth in it, which is quite helpful. It gives you an interesting perspective on this man's life. It's a very well written, very deeply researched book, and there are lots of pieces of information which I, as a member of Lincoln's Inn, had not seen before. We've seen the actual portrait of him, and there is a crest on the wall because of his work with the inn. Let me give you the review, though, as it stands, with some perspective, because as an advocate myself, I find this an interesting book, because the problems that he's confronted with, which we saw in a slightly simpler version on television, but you get it through the book, is the real frustrations and difficulties that you can have with advocacy. And he's actually, if you think of it, a pretty brave man to take on some of the establishment at a time when there were massive numbers of people executed for the most trivial matters. And obviously things have changed. Let me start off with that great libertarian, if you like, I don't know if you'd like me to call him that, Geoffrey Robertson counsel, who gives a foreword to the book, and he actually sets out, following the television series, the position that he sees Garrow in. He says Garrow was the first great cross-examiner at the English bar who truly can be said to have revolutionized the practice of criminal law, and I know that that's correct from my own experience as a Crown prosecutor, a defender, and what I do today in general common law terms. Before Garrow, who was an advocate at the Old Bailey in its original incarnation for 10 years from 1783, the supposedly admirable edifice of English law, which had evolved over several centuries, was deeply flawed. And Garrow, when he began his practice, could see that those charged with capital felonies could not be represented by counsel, a sort of state of affairs that would be deemed unimaginably appalling today. Even while this ancient anomaly was breaking down, however, counsel was still not allowed to address the jury on the prisoner's behalf. Garrow, almost single-handedly, we surmise, and I've written this review with my wife Elizabeth, we take the view that with his trenchant and aggressive adversarial skills and courage, persuaded juries to acquit his often hapless clients, winning battles for them against unscrupulous bounty hunters, whose income derived mainly from the blood money they earned in accusing the innocent of crimes, and you see that laid out in the storyboards for the TV programs. The two authors' stated purpose in the publication of this biography is to introduce the reader to the life of a remarkable man in the context of his time and family, and secondly, to present him as the criminal lawyer who led the way in altering the whole relationship between the state and the individual by his role in the revolutionary introduction of adversarial trial. That's what he did. Garrow helped revolutionize criminal trial procedure, something a lot of lawyers, of course, listening to this and reading the review will be interested in, is the process of which he and certainly his contemporaries were only dimly aware, but which would lead inevitably to reinforcing and extending the principles of justice and fair treatment, which are at the heart of the current human rights legislation. As the authors have observed, adversariality, if we can use that word, with its lasting impact on worldwide jurisprudence, has been a contributing factor in the establishment of a culture of human rights. So even if you've seen the excellent TV programs, do read this book, 170 pages plus some useful additional material at the back, and immerse yourself in the wealth of the factual information and comment that's contained in its 17 chapters. It'll give you the breadth of the understanding to the sort of birth of modern advocacy, and it's certainly an area I'm involved with because I can see the problems he had, only fortunately I don't have quite the severe sanctions which my clients would face if they lose, but you can see some of the problems he had, and frankly they do tend to repeat themselves from time to time. Much of the information in the 3 appendices sources, which is at the back of the book, been gleaned from original documents and many quoted verbatim. There's an excellent timeline which I found helpful, giving the biographical perspective, and the timeline gives you a picture, because as I'll come on you'll see what this guy actually did. He's not just a barrister, he did a few other things. The startling insight, for instance, into the Garrow family's life, any number of references made to the social and political issues of the time in which he was involved and the injustices against which he fought, from slavery to animal cruelty. Following his 10-year career as a young barrister of note, he then became an MP, then Solicitor General, Attorney General, a judge and a lawmaker, so he did a lot. As Attorney General, Garrow had overall responsibility for the trial and conviction of John Hannay in 1817. This man Hannay was a slave trader and also involved with the passage of the Slave Trade Abolition Act of 1807, following the efforts of people like Wilberforce and others to secure such a law. We must conclude, say the authors, that it was finally implemented by Garrow, and that's a good tribute. Both authors have written, we think, a blockbuster of a book, avidly perused not just by the legal fraternity, which of course it's aimed at, but by the general public as well. And I'm very grateful to Brian Gibson and Waterside Press for producing this. It's an excellent addition to my library. We now wait expectantly and anxiously, hopefully, for a new TV series, as this rediscovered lost advocate, as we see him, is now rightly a distinguished 21st century star, 200 years on, and we are the better for it in our view, as the advocacy of the past is unveiled. So thank you very much indeed. Great new book for our libraries. Thanks, bye-bye.